The competitive 40K network presents Art of War. Art of War. Strategy and tactics. Discussions with the best players on the planet. Now your host, Nick Nanavati.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Art of War podcast. This week, we have a return guest star, the winner of the London Grand Tournament, and now the man who made Death Guard work at the World Championships of Warhammer, Liam VSL. Liam, how are you doing?
Good. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Liam. Thank you so much for coming on. You were really well received last time, and I just had to get you back on after doing well with Death Guard, an army that everyone saw get a big glow up after the balanced data slate. But did it go from D tier to S tier? Like, what just happened? You're the giant man. For those of you who don't know, Liam is apparently 7 feet tall, 2 kilometers.
Not quite.
No, he and Quentin played a game, and if you don't know, Quentin's also incredibly tall, and that must have been the tallest game of Warhammer ever played. That was like the NBA, but 40K style.
I mean, that was one of the tallest opponent I had, indeed. I faced once another guys in stream, and both of us couldn't basically be on the stream camera because we were both too tall. That was funny as well.
Oh my God, the logistical challenge. How was flying for you at this event? Flying all the way from Belgium to Atlanta. That's not a quick flight.
So we basically took the kind of basic economy class, which was maybe a mistake for me because I didn't have a lot of room. But I mean,
I'm young and I'm used to so.
You can still afford these things on your body.
Yeah.
That's funny. So was the travel terrible? Was it okay?
No, it was okay. It was my first long flight, more than 12 hours. I actually never went outside of Europe before that. So
how was your experience in America?
I mean, that was a first time. It was quite quick and mainly 40K, and the city was a little bit meh, but I mean, I would love to come back at one point, which I will for sure.
Yeah, next time you're going to have to come stop by the Art of War house. We'll show you around.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So we're here to talk about your performance at the World Championships of Warhammer. For those of you who don't know Liam, he is like a prodigy in the making. He is, how old are you, 20 years old?
22.
22 years old. He has won the London Grand Tournament. He's at the World Championships of Warhammer, flying in all the way from Belgium. He's played on the Belgian WTC team. And now he's here to take it down with an army like Death Guard. In part 1 of this 2-part episode, we're going to cover what that journey was like. How do you even go from playing Chaos Space Marines, dropping them like a hot potato in this meta, and then picking up Death Guard? What is that choice? What is the preparation for that? Limited time leading up to Worlds, unknown tournament environment. They usually play on different terrain formats. So many factors. I want to know exactly how we got here. Then we're going to break down the list, detail by detail, line by line, and explain exactly how it works on the tabletop, kind of conceptually at the strategic level. And then in part 2, that's for all of our subscribers, our Patreons on AOW40k.com. Liam is actually going to play back all of his games from the WCW and give us the play-by-play. How did he actually go 7-1, beating some of the best players in the entire world with Death Guard? We're going to unpack it all. So Liam, I'll leave it up to you. How did you go from playing Chaos Space Marines, where we left off, LGT, Chosen Rhinos, everything's awesome, to Death Guard?
So after LGT, I wanted to start to explore new things because I saw I had made a good turn with CSM, Chaos Space Marine. So, and because I'm the Chaos player of my team, I was looking for every option, Demon, and then later Death Guard, and also Chaos Space Marine. My first idea was still to come at Worlds with Chaos Space Marine, so I change my list, put more MSU, more Rubric, 3 Rhino, stuff like that. Play a ton of game with it. The week before World, I was doing a Coventry Super Major with the CSM because 2 weeks before the World, I was still going with CSM. But for my team preparation for WTC and stuff, I needed to test Death Guard at one point. And after seeing a lot of how they play and stuff like that, I started to like them a lot. And I started to be a little bit bored of CSM because I play 40 game-ish in tournament with them and twice as much in practice, which after 100-ish game, I start to be bored of an army. So I decided to, let's change. Because I was basically seeing that Death Guard is quite good and have a lot of play. So I wanted to like test intensities. And like the week before World, like 3 days before list submission, I find like a list where I was happy about. I was like still 50-50 on submitting my CSM list. But then I decided like, to go like for the cool part and have like more fun. Like
Go for the glory. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for the glory.
No, I think you were the only Death Guard player at the WCW, and I know everyone was like shocked and stunned to see you actually press the submit button. I think a lot of top players looked at Death Guard, right? They got amazing rules all of a sudden. Contagions are phenomenal. You're going to explain that to us. But, their data sheets are still, at least from our perspective, a little lackluster. And putting it together, how does it all come together? That takes time and testing and all that stuff that you were willing to put in very quickly. That I don't think a lot of people were. Eldar's tried and true. CSM is tried and true. It almost felt like you were snowflaking. And whenever you snowflake, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And I would say, Liam, it worked really, really well. So congratulations.
I mean, yeah, it was not really snowflake. It was more that I actually saw that like Death Guard was so strong and it was so weird. Nobody never played them. Like I saw like one guy's playing in it that to like a tournament and winning it, and I was there. Yeah, Death Guard is like fucking amazing. I was there. Yeah, it's like close to like top 5, maybe top 3 army in the game right now, and there is not a lot of talk on it. But so yeah, and like so I decided to go with them. Like it was. I really thought I had like a shot to win with it. It was like not only like going with like a cooler army than CSM, but yeah.
That's awesome. So you started playing Death Guard kind of out of like boredom, and I totally get that. I've been crazy reps in with CSM myself, and like I'm now exploring Sisters of Battle because I just need something different to do with my time. But the Death Guard, like what did you like about them? What drew you to this faction? There's still chaos. That's pretty cool. But like rules wise, what really did you see?
So first, like my gameplay is a little bit like MSU, like transport, Rhino stuff and that, which Death Guard do actually really well. Between like Plague Marine costing it only 16 points per model, all the little characters costing like 50 to 60 points, 70 and like 100 for Typhus and like more for Mortarion. So I could actually build a list that were fitting my playstyle quite well. So like I start several lists, different lists and stuff, and like. So after like I think I had like 4 or 5 versions of the list, and like after like you do a version, play like 3 games with it, and then you're there, oh that's cool, that's a little bit meh, so I'm gonna maybe swipe that. So in the end so basically 2 weeks before list submission I had like 2 lists which was similar. The only difference was I had either 3 plague burst crawler or 3 brigand. And like I wanted both, so when I find a list with both, I was oh that's a cool list, and then decide to submit.
Interesting. So you were kind of like meh with your Death Guard list, just playing. They're okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's not better than your tried and true CSM. But then when you had 2 lists, I guess 1 on 3 Plague Burst Crawlers, 1 on 3 Brigands, and you thought about combining them, that was kind of like. Yeah, it clicked. Yeah. And when it clicks with you for a list, that's you kind of know, you feel it. You're like, I'm going to submit this. This is the one. And that's awesome. It's really cool. So what was that testing journey like, right? I think a lot of players see some potential, and I'll speak for myself just as an outside perspective here. And like, Mortarion is kind of an auto take at the get-go, and you're not running him. And then like Plague Burst Crawlers are okay, it seems. We've tried them. They're very okay. Plague Marines and Rhinos are cheap, but they kind of suck. I don't know. The grenade guys are great, no arguing there. But like, how do you come with all of it together, right? Like, it's all of different ratios. You just run 60 Plague Marines and 6 Rhinos. Like, you have a very nice mix. And what was the testing like to bring us to the point of your submission?
So like, first, I like shout out to like his name is Max Guis or something that won a tournament I think a month ago or something, and write a really cool article. You can probably find it somewhere. And I basically read that article and I was like, that's interesting. So I basically start with his list. So in the mind, like write my own list, but really similar to that one, like drop like 200 points difference. And then it was like 6 5-man Plague Marine in Rhino with like 3 Plague Bursts and like some Terminator. And then I started to not really like the Terminator. So I played that list for like 5 games, drop some Terminator to put more Rhino, add like the big squad with full blast spawn. And I actually find that big squad with full blast spawn do actually a ton of damage, both in shooting and in melee. So even though like Death Guard doesn't have like great data sheet ability most of the time, besides maybe the biologists, but like Plague Marine only get like +1 leadership when they hold an objective or stuff like that, which is basically irrelevant. I mean, sometime in come out, but like not a lot. And then like the stratagem on the first read seem like kind of meh, but actually some are really, really good because like the +1 AP is actually really amazing because it also increase. Maybe I explain the strats really quick. It's basically +1 AP in shooting or in melee. And if you score critical wound and your target is in contagion range, is +2 AP on critical wound. And Death Guard have a lot of anti-infantry flamer, which means that you proc those critical wound much more easiest. Which like when all of that, like you play some game, find out and stuff, and like in the end, all together that do a crazy amount of damage. So yeah, after like I said, testing. Like I start with 5 men, end up with like 10 men Plague Marine. Like I start with like Plasma, then put Melta to fit more like the target I wanted to have. Like a lot of that. I find the list and I was kind of happy with it.
Right. It sounds like that's a lot of learning the army as you're playing it and kind of refining it. When you're jumping to a new faction, though, there's like so much data sheet overload, right? Like everything is kind of okay in Death Guard. Like Bloat Jones are only 100 points. The Death Shrouds are a pretty decent data sheet. You can really go deep into the character spam, right?
Yeah.
In Playcasters are 65 points of value.
Yeah, like the Terminator Sorcerer are amazing.
Right. So like your list is very refined and lean. How did you eliminate those choices from it and why?
So basically, I don't have a big collection in Death Guard. So like I started with a little bit like how I had, and like when like it was really not really like objective choice, but more like a feeling. I felt that way. So like my first build was only running those data sheets, and I was kind of happy with it. So then I didn't have much time to practice, and I think I will still do some practice with Death Guard to maybe find other archetype. But like I find that build that was like looking around, I just had to make it match the list, like -1 full blind spawn, +5 like little detail, but keeping the same data sheet. And because I want Rhino, basically, because I love Rhino Rush, so I want unit that go in Rhino. So like all the Terminator variant, I just drop it because like it only really work with rapid ingress, which are kind of easy to like see coming. And even rapid ingress, you only move 4 after it, so you're kind of limited in option. So I decided to go fully on like body that can go in Rhino and like go from there. And I also like Death Guard is kind of slow, so like every data sheet, so it was either fast moving, like Plague Burst is kind of fast for Death Guard, and then Rhino, and like it limited my choice. Obviously I looked to ally as well, like that part was kind of easy, like because Nurgling is kind of a no-brain for action purposes and like -1 to hit or in melee. And then like the Brigand was another addition because they have it's a fast, like not really fast, but kind of fast shooting platform, which is neat. And with Contagion Aura, the shooting profile go to great to really, really good. Because like when you add -1 toughness to the opponent and technically +1 AP to the gun, suddenly like the Gatling become insane. Even the indirect is kind of good. And the Melta are still cool.
Right. So you don't have to take the data sheets that bring the raw power because you're kind of just powering up your flamers and your bolters to better levels with the contagions. And that's really the -1 armor save stacking with the -1 toughness and then the AP strat all just adding together, right?
Yeah. It's mostly that, because when you look at the profile, like the straight up profile of Death Guard, they seem kind of meh. But when you add -1 save to your opponent, suddenly every single weapon in the army look good, even like combi bolter with a little hit on Rhino is like do kind of good damage when you win because everything is kind of +1 AP, which is like really cool. Like even like fist in melee, because like Plague Marine, they have like basically it's a Plague Knife, which is basically no EP damage 1, strength 4 attack with lethal hit. And like when you look at that first, is that, oh, that does nothing, but actually it does quite a lot because when you can go to technically AP2, lethal hit on 5, like all of that is like, yeah, it's a lot of like little combo that when you put together, you kill anything, which is kind of satisfying, really good to feel. Like I like those kind of units, I can basically kill anything with the right target priority and stuff like that because like one unit probably don't do it, but when you add the Rhino, maybe another 5-man, another grenade strat, help from indirect a bit, stuff like that, you basically kill anything.
That's really fascinating. It's kind of that combined arms approach. And we're seeing that a lot in Warhammer right now, the MSU, multiple small unit armies that just, do a little bit here, a little bit there, smooth block there, charge something there, create chaos on the table, and win all these little mini fights around the board. And together exactly. It all adds up. Is that like your play style as a person, or do you find that just very effective in Warhammer today?
Yeah. I mean, it's my play style as a person, and it's kind of true in the meta right now. But like generally, what I like to do is generate a lot of mini fights, which the impact is actually really important. Like, and Death Guard is actually really good at winning those mini five, like a Rhino versus 5 random dudes, stuff like that. The Rhino suddenly between like the -1 save from the base, the contagion, the bolter become AP1. You go in, tongue shock, fight in melee. You can even kill one more guys in melee because you hit on 4, strength 6. Even if your opponent is like toughness 4 with the -1 toughness, they go to toughness 3, so you win on 2, they have -1 save. So all of that, like you generate really a lot of mini fight where you can win. Generally, Death Guard are not that good at winning like the big fight, like I don't know, for example, Plague Marine versus Wraith Guard or stuff like that. But all the mini fight where like there is like a Rhino versus 5 Spider, those fights generally go their way, which is kind of cool.
I love that you're using your rhinos to kill things. That's just really cool. Like, you don't think of using rhinos as offensive pieces, but put some guys inside, that's 2 dudes shooting out top, the combi bolter, the havoc launcher, it adds up. It really does.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about what your actual submission choice was? Because you had Death Guard and you had CSM, and how seriously were you taking this tournament and the competition and the testing for the format and all that? Because there's so many variables flying overseas into a field you really don't know that well, into a format you don't play. What was that like?
So, yeah, I basically, from after LGT, I start to play a lot on GW terrain for testing that. And I was playing CSM a lot. And like I play like 30 games with CSM, but it was a lot of Eldar because in my team they were a lot playing Eldar, so like testing those, but testing other matchup. And like after, I think I saw a lot about the competition and then realized that the meta was kind of cool and how do you say that, healthy enough that it didn't matter what I would bring as long as the army is good, because I think at the end it will only play on the table. Because if you take like the best army that was CSM, everybody were taking against it anyway, so everyone would have like practice. So taking a slightly worse, but like the other people are a little bit less trained versus it, would in the end be the same. And all that will matter would be like you at the table playing, try to be better than your opponent, or do the better choice on like the instinct or stuff like that. Would be the big factor, and not really the army list you would submit. So
I think that's a really great way to look at it too. It's so easy to get lost in the sauce about lists and the optimizations and this matchup and that matchup, and especially like when you're preparing for team events, or if you're in a more broken meta when there's like a very strong combo or army that's obviously dominating. That's when the list kind of matters more. But the meta is healthy for the most part. Eldar and CSM are very good, of course, but most armies can hang, as you've proven. Death Guard going 7-1 here. So, like, when you say it's up to you as a general on the table, that's obviously like kind of outplaying your opponent. And one thing, I love that answer, by the way, but one thing that I think is a little bit challenging with that is you've just picked up Death Guard 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. And then how much time to practice that army versus, the hundreds of reps you have on CSM? How does that value?
So I actually didn't pick Death Guard 2 weeks ago. I did it 1 month ago. And, starting to play 1 or 2 games a week during the 2 first weeks. I did 5 or 6 games. And then I was ready with CSM anyway. So I literally stopped playing CSM after 3 weeks before the event. I only play CSM in actual tournament, not in training game because I had enough reps anyway. So I was more playing for trying to find new option and stuff for like I say, for my team, for the BTC team, demon, stuff like that. And so I start to play more. When I was doing a training game, I had for example, guys coming with, I don't know, Eldar. I was there, I play 20 games, the game Eldar CSM. I know how it's going to go. So I'm just going to play Death Guard instead to see how that goes. And, stuff like that. And in the end, I practice I practice, I would say for me, it's not that much, but generally it's good enough. I did maybe 15 to 20 games with Death Guard before the event, which is kind of a fair amount already. So
no, it's a lot of Warhammer. That's more Warhammer than I play. That's for sure. No, your preparation for it definitely speaks volumes to your player skill and performance here. I mean, the fact that you see these little micro combinations and you turn Rhino combi bolters and little flamers that people write off as useless into real damage dealing elements is something that someone who is a faction expert I would expect from, and you've been able to replicate that in just about a month, with confidence enough to submit it to Worlds. I think there's something really telling about that. There is also an element of looking for it, and when you look for something and you find something, it's easier, but it's really impressive nonetheless.
Yeah, but I mean, when you think about it, the gameplay of Death Guard is kind of close to CSM. So the apple didn't fall far from the tree, like we say, was it's Rhino. So in CSM you have Rhino, and then you put I don't know, Chosen with combi weapon, or even Rubric with Soul Reaper and Rhino, and you use the firing deck a lot to engage the units, to start the trade, put a Rhino, shoot with the firing deck with good weapon inside, shoot with the bolter, with Dark Pack, with CSM, and then charge Tank Shock. In Death Guard, it's kind of the same. You put the Rhino, shoot with bolter, flamer from inside, and then Tank Shock, and you have the -1 save instead of the Dark Pact, which in the end is kind of similar. And you initiate the trade like this, killing the chaff unit. So then the opponent has to come kill the Rhino. And then you, in Death Guard, you even fight first, so they cannot really charge you. If you position the Rhino well, you are not shootable because you disembark behind a wall. And then all of that, those kind of mechanics is stuff you start to know through every codex, because you play that in that gameplay in CSM, even in Harlequin, in that, and you can just replicate that to any codex you play.
Yeah, there's definitely transferable skills between the armies, and I think that leveraging a Marine is still a Marine, a Rhino is still a Rhino, that goes a really long way. And then Brigands and Plagueburst Crawlers are not rocket science to figure out how to play, but we'll get into the list and how it plays a little bit deeper in the show. I have one more question to ask on this stuff, though. There is a real speed difference between Chosen charging out of a Rhino and Plague Marines, meandering out of a Rhino, right? Advance and charge on move 6 versus just move 5. And that across an army, that is a real challenge to try to learn, because it's just a different way of positioning your models. What was that like?
So basically, the difference between Chosen and Plague Marine is that Chosen are basically a melee unit with a little bit of shooting, grenade and stuff. Plague Marine are basically the opposite. It's a shooting unit with a little bit of melee, with a fair amount of melee, because basically, and to basically compensate the fact you move 5, what you actually do with Rhino is you move actually 12, disembark, just shoot, and then you let your opponent come at you because you fight first, or you're in a position where you cannot get shoot. So you use the movement of the Rhino to be faster, and in the end, it end up being relatively similar in the way of where our objective, where you basically want to interact with units that are close to objective. So if you put a Rhino with moving 12, you don't need to be that much faster to interact with the unit you need to interact in most of the matchup. Like some matchup, like Eldar, it's a little bit trickier, but obviously, like that's another subject.
Yeah, for sure. I love the way you describe that too. Like you don't have to be fast. The Rhino makes up for it specifically, and then most people, I think, view Plague Marines as combat units, right? A 10-man comes with 5 heavy melee weapons, but it can also come with a lot of guns, as we'll see. But I think this is a great segue into what the list you actually took was. So if you can kind of go through it line by line, Liam, what is the army you took to WCW?
So the army is kind of easy. It's 3 Biologist Putrifier, 2 Full Blightspawn for the character. Then for the infantry, it's 2 10-man Plague Marine with the same loadout, which is basically heavy weapon, plasma pistol on the Surge, 2 Melta, 2 Plague Spewer, 1 Blind Launcher, and 4 heavy weapon. So that's make the 10-man. And then I have 4 5-men with a plasma heavy weapon on the Surge, 1 Melta, 1 Plague Spewer, 2 heavy weapon, all the same loadout too. And all two 5-men, not 4, sorry, 2 5-men, and all of those 4 units goes in 3 Rhino. Like generally, it's gonna be the 2 10-men with the biologists. They can. I mean, I will go detail later, but like 2 characters, 2 10-men in Rhino, and like the 2 5-men with the last character in the last Rhino. Then I have 3 Plague Burst Crawler with Mortar and Entropy, and the Slugger, and then 3 Brigand with also the Havoc Launcher indirect on top with like the Melta and the Gatling, obviously, and then 2 3-man Nurgling for infiltration, deep strike, and stuff. So that's the list.
So this actually strikes me as a nice balanced force. It's definitely skewed towards shooting, but uses combat as like a counterpunch, right? You got 3 Plague Burst Crawlers, 3 Brigands, all those pack some quality anti-tank shocks, and all that indirect between the mortars and even the Havoc launchers adding up. And the Brigands love the -1 toughness and -1 save, or as your army's emitting. And then you got these Rhinos for midfield boxing and kind of objective play and stuff like that. I can kind of see how it comes together. But in your words, Liam, how did you use this army?
So like the idea is you basically the first idea, like a comparison I had in mind, is basically you're playing better Chaos Knight because you have good infantry. So you are those 9 Stompy robots, which are basically Rhino, Plague Burst, and Brigand, where you can push the middle on a lot of match. And because you have the Plague Marine, that you can either move, keep in counter charge or push with them. Like the opponent will often have a choice between like dealing with like those kind of tanky 10 that on the paper don't do that much damage. I mean, they do a fair amount, but not that much, or like those good damage dealer that are the Plague Marine. And like you can kind of like rush your opponent in annoying way for him to deal with, because like between fight first from the Flamer dude, the Full Blightspawn, or like all you can stack -1 to it a bit. Even if you take -1 save like 95% of the time, you can still like you have a smoke on the Rhino and you have a strat to make to give stealth to any unit in the codex. So all of that is kind of important, and like all of that adds up together. And so like the army would work how? So basically it's generally try to put the Rhino in like not on the line, because I don't want to lose them early, but as aggressive as I can to still be hiding or in position where they don't die. And I will push the Rhino to the midfield to start while like killing the little chaff with the indirect. Generally would put some stuff in deep strike because it's still a slow army. So using like rapid ingress to reach the home field objective or stuff like that is kind of important, because generally you're kind of fast enough to reach the midfield, but reaching the home field of your opponent is really hard. So like putting like either a Rhino in rapid ingress or like a Brigand or 2, so you can like kill the chaff with the indirect, like, the 10 cultists that's going to screen the corner, and then infiltrate a knight in the backfield, stuff like that, which is kind of important, all of that. And then if your opponent like screen heavily his backfield, he put less pressure on the midfield, so you win the midfield, and it's single, so winning by like 5 points is enough. So all of that is like common strategy. Like the rapid ingress Rhino is actually a play I like it a lot because it allows you to react more to your opponent. Because with Death Guard, the problem is that when you deploy a unit, it's kind of there. You can go in one position, but then where you're on that position, you move 5. So you will not interact with the rest of the battlefield quickly enough to do stuff that matter. Because like generally you would go like, on the edge objective to reach like the other edge objective, basically mean you're never going to do it. So having that, rapid ingress Rhino, where you can basically like on turn 2 or 3, see where like the big fight's going to happen, rapid ingress that Rhino on the big fight to help winning that side. And like on the other side, you already kind of still winning anyway. Stuff like that is kind of important.
Yeah, no, I love the description there. I would not have described it that way myself, and that's why you're here, right? Like, so you're playing your Death Guard like Chaos Knights. That's the first thing that caught my attention. It's also like the first thing you said. For those of you who didn't follow that analogy, that Chaos Knights are a little deceptive in their play style. They're a very primary control army. They have a stratagem to move through walls. They can just dominate objectives by pushing objective control 8 bodies onto you while threatening the fact that they're really scary knights. So if you try to fight them and table them, they'll just table you back. Anyways, with Death Guard here, you described it as that, right? You have 9 vehicles, the Blavers, Crawlers, Mortars, and Brigands, and the
Right.
Rhinos. And then the Rhinos are kind of like objective control missiles, right? The Plague Marines get out on the midfield and they're staying there. And then your description of focusing on the indirect to clear other screens, the cultists and stuff, get the Brigand outflanked back there, or react with a Rhino to make up for move 5 by outflanking a Rhino. All really, really awesome plays, kind of really coming together. And you're using the fact that you're debuffing your opponent to leverage your stats into a way that you're actually just like kicking their ass with it. What kind of armies, without getting too specific in your matchups, that's what part 2 is, give this like this trouble? This is a pretty sound strategy here.
So it's actually worked really well against most army. Obviously, like the army that is kind of cheap enough to screen me, like if you make the fight happening too late in the game, I will not push enough. So that game could be like struggling for me because you could win because you have like Death Guard doesn't have that great like secondary control or stuff like that. So like if an army like that is either fast enough that can like precisely go focus one flank and then can move on the other flank and precisely focus that one is annoying, or like army that have like a lot of cheap screen and can just afford to play like the same game as me, kind of like putting 5 idiots on objective, like a Naomi denied primary, and then make the game like still keeping the big damage dealer for later could be annoying. Stuff like that. But overall, Death Guard have not a lot of bad matchup. I didn't like, maybe beside like 1 or 2 difficult one, most of the rest is like good matchup, so it's kind of good. I'm also a little bit scared of really hard shooting army and hitting a bad table where like I can just lose my Rhino turn 1, because I need my Rhino alive on turn 1 to be able to move through the middle, because if not, I'm like kind of stuck. So losing the Rhino turn 2 or 3 is not a problem, but losing them turn 1 is annoying. So like some army have are fast enough / kill enough to kill Rhino fast, and those one are kind of annoying if I like hit the bad table. So yeah, those one are the 2 I'm scared, I think. The 2
Right.
archetypes.
Okay, no, I think that's awesome. And then one more question for you before we kind of move on to our actual matchups and this part 2 discussion here. What are your secondaries and like how aggressive are you playing this army? Because one thing I also notice is that you just give up bringing it down. That stuff is free. If you give your opponent the option to do deploy homers and bring it down, you have to make up the difference here. So how are you approaching that scoring aspect of the game?
I actually give 20 on assassination and bring it down in my list, which some of the people say to me that they didn't understand how the list could work by giving 40 secondary points. But what I answer is that most of the time it actually doesn't matter, because so it either matter because I'm losing anyway, or like I'm trying to win the fight most of the time. So when I'm winning the fight, you're not scoring those points kind of easily, because like the PBC are not like given, like the PBC and the Brigand are always in the second wave. So if you don't win against my first wave, which are the Rhino and the Plague Marine, you will not score Bring It Down for the Plague Burst and the Brigand. And even if you win on my second wave, but I did so many damage, I will just finish the game with the 3 Plague Burst and the 3 Brigand. So that's not that much. So the secondary option for Death Guard are generally, they go tactical okay, because nowadays most of the tactical rely you to go in the middle / killing unit on objectives / killing unit. And like the annoying one, investigate signal or stuff like that, you put that 3-man nurgling in deep strike. So if you and you deep striking in a way, you're sure to be able to do it at worst for 2 points on signal. If you draw it, you only score 2 points. It's fine. Or at worst, you just discard it to gain a CP. So they do tactical okay. But most of the time, I will just go Homer plus a killing secondary if my opponent allow me to do so. Because it's just so much easier to Homer the middle every turn and kill tank or kill whatever, kill character. Those kind of stuff is important, is easier because Homer is so good as a secondary and they do that fine. I will score 30 on secondary. It's not gonna it's fine enough. Even if my opponent score 40 on secondary, if I lose, I would have lost even if they score 35, which is easy enough to score in most missions, for most army anyway. So I'm not too worried about giving up secondary.
Yeah, it's a very interesting approach to list building. I was thinking you only have 5 characters, which is maximum assassinate, but you could deny that in theory. But they're attached to your units that you need to use, and they're a good portion of your damage dealing. They're just being thrown at your opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just don't care. It's amazing to see. And it's amazing to see it work, really.
I had game where I give 30 secondary to my opponent on 1 turn, and it was still okay.
Are you you just said, right? You don't even flinch about that stuff. You're not trying to be cagey and force them to come to you to get the points at least. You're just giving them to your opponent. What if they're also an army that's scoring super high? You're playing Sisters of Battle or Orcs or something that's just going to score its primary because of the virtue of its army, and then secondaries you're handing them.
So there is two. If I play well, normally those armies are kind of army that table kind of easily. So it's not really a concern. And that if the army is really, really annoying for that, I don't table them. The mission is going to be really high primary anyway, priority target or something like that. And then they score really good secondary as well. I'm maybe going to lose by 2 or 3 or maybe 5 points. But like I say, I'm mainly a team player. So for single, obviously it's important. But because the list is mainly for team. And most of my list, I play mostly for team anyway. Single is only a training for team. So it don't bother me at the list building step of my tournament. I'm not gonna stop a list because sometimes it's gonna lose by 5 points against some matchup, because losing by 5 points is still a 10-10 in WTC scoring, so it's fine to me. But in single, obviously, you want to try to win by 1. So I will the opponent take Bring It Down. It's not auto 20, even though Assassination is really close to an auto 20 in how I play. But Bring It Down is much more harder to score. So if they score Bring It Down, it's okay. They're gonna score 12 to 15 if I decide so, and I win. So it's fine. I can win by 2-3 points. And if I lose, I lose. That happens.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Really, just if you're gonna go for the strategy of winning the game by a lot because I'm killing them, it really doesn't matter. And I really love that about your approach. It's very honest in that regard. So I think I've already kind of put the bull before the horns here. We're talking about matchups already. Liam, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to talk about our matchups in part 2, everybody. So you can catch that on AOW40k.com. This is going to wrap it up for part 1 of the show. But do please join us on part 2. You'll get access to this episode, all 216 other episodes, and our Discord server for just $5 a month. So you know what? Why don't you hop right in there? Liam, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you to you to have me.
All right, we will see you next week, listeners.
Like what you just listened to? Check out Art of War Down Under and Art of War Unbroken on the competitive 40K network. The Art of War 40K.com.